While most of my friends preferred Carvel or Old Eli's candy store at the corner of Mill Road and Parsons Place, my hangout was the Eastchester Library. Built in 1967 at the height of the space race, it had a futuristic look to it, a sleek white monument to the incurably curious. Our town's very first instance of mid-century modern architecture crowned the hill on Oak Ridge Place, its bright lines a sharp contrast to the sun-mellowed, friendly red brick apartment houses next door. Inside, a glassed-in stairway led to the main floor, its ceilings dotted with dancing Calder-style mobiles. The reading rooms, with their book-lined aisles and twin silvery staircases to the top floor stacks, seemed to beckon to the very heavens. My library was a refuge, a respite from the vagaries of childhood fads and fashions. It was safe. Certainly, no self-respecting school bully would be caught dead there. More importantly, it was filled with books, those gifts of words destined to ignite the imagination of an aspiring author or soothe the hurt feelings of a seventh grade outcast. Almost from the moment that I received my first library card, I craved the tranquility of a life surrounded by stories. In 1985, my 15th summer, I was hired as a page. My haven now became my workplace. For a geeky, bespectacled teenager fascinated with history, the 80s were intolerable. An era of bad cologne, 3-minute music videos, and way too many cable channels. History was starting to feel vaguely disposable. 1985, in general, was an environment hostile to the bookish. I needed an escape. And that was when I discovered a secret portal to the past. In the library's basement, next to the service elevator, was a door no one ever opened. One morning, intrigued, I abandoned my cart of returned books and quietly entered. I breathed in the smell of dust and old ink, and as my eyesight adjusted to the low light, I saw boxes upon boxes of files on the steel shelves. Reaching inside of one, I pulled out a magazine called Look. Its cover seemed to call out to me from the 60s. A girl in an orange mini dress, white go-go boots, elaborately curled hair, pale lipstick, and a tracing of flower petals surrounding her wide, dark eyes. I discovered defunct magazines I had never heard of, titles long out of print. Of course, there were familiar issues like Vogue and 17 and Cosmopolitan, but I had no interest in those old, dusty, fluffy stories about prom dresses and boyfriends. Instead, I read about war and culture and music and politics, a cascade of a turbulent decade or two unfolding in real time. As the summer days passed, I would find time each day to slip down to the basement. I read not only about the Kennedy assassinations and the Beatles' arrival in America, but also the less monumental stories that were published on my parents' birthdays, the week of their wedding, the day I was born. I wanted to read the headlines that had once perhaps captured the attention of those I loved from a distant newsstand in the past. Even though I knew how so many of these stories ended, I wanted to read them in their time, with their eyes. Reading Life and Look and Harper's Bazaar and Time gave me access to history while in its present day, captured in those thin, fragile pages. They allowed me to hold the past in my hands, helped me to understand the days of those I loved when they were my age, young and wondering and discovering their lives. That magazine room, it no longer exists. A year ago, I stood in that space, now an auditorium, giving a book talk as a writer of historical fiction whose work is rooted in uncovering the details of the past. But once upon a time, I found out what it was like to touch the past before it was scanned, saved to the cloud, digitized, discarded, intangible.